With a really bizarre, strange development in the R. Kelly case. And there have been strange developments before. It's one of those cases. And as you recall, R. Kelly facing charges in Illinois, in New York, state court, federal court. It's a mess for him. It's an absolute mess. But his attorneys filed some motion papers that caught our attention this week. I want to put up on the screen what they are and then try to get to the bottom of what is going on here. A motion to require the disclosure of grand jury subpoenas, production of all grand jury materials, and for a protective order. And incredibly, among the bank records produced, and this means produced by the government, were records from one of the individual attorneys currently representing Mr. Kelly in his federal criminal case in New York, and from a major international law firm who had previously represented Mr. Kelly. The attorney's records date back to 2013. Now, the government does not have, and this is the argument being made, does not have and never had any lawful basis to believe that either the New York lawyer or the law firm ever engaged in any type of improper conduct. In short, the government went on an unreasonable, intimidating, and harassing fishing expedition into the records of Mr. Kelly's current counsel, as well as into the records of one of the country's preeminent law firms. So what is going on here? Apparently the feds are looking at the bank records of R. Kelly's attorneys. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you think about, again, when you are investigating like a mob boss or the drug cartel, and you know everybody's dirty, but you're looking at records from law firms. So we need to get some perspective and understand exactly what's going on here. So we've invited Steve Greenberg, one of the attorneys for R. Kelly, on the program. Join us from Chicago. Steve, great to see you. Let's clarify.
You too, Vinny.
Not your bank records. You're not your bank records, right?
Not my bank records. Right. But
okay.
It really is an overreach. We had a status this week.
Put some perspective on this. I want to give folks at home the big picture first, okay?
Okay.
Is this something that normally happens? Does the federal government, when they've got a criminal defendant, start investigating his or her attorneys as well?
Oh, God, no. It would be awful. It would have such a chilling effect that no one would ever be able to find any lawyer to represent them. The explanation that the government provided this week during the status we had was that they were trying to find out where money was going from Kelly's accounts, and they at least claimed that they didn't know when they subpoenaed the records that the records actually belonged to the lawyer and the law firm. I want to find out what else they're looking for, what else they happen to fall into, because the government can't just, when you're under indictment, go and look at every aspect of your life and every decision that you made. They have to have a reasonable basis for doing it, and we don't think they have that here.
Well, let me ask you this. You know, you're sitting back, you've got to represent R. Kelly, and you've got a bunch of cases, like I said, state and federal, Illinois, New York. When you see prosecutors doing things like this, and I'm a former prosecutor, not a federal prosecutor, but I'm a former prosecutor. Do you see this as a sign of strength of their case or a sign of weakness of their case?
I don't see it as a sign of either. I see it as a sign of overkill. They have indicted R. Kelly in New York, in Chicago, in federal court, in state court, in Minnesota. There is such overkill when you examine the charges against him that I have no idea why they need to extract or try and extract any more pound of flesh from this poor man. And let me tell you a bigger problem, Vinny, and I know this wasn't something that I talked to your producer about beforehand, but here's a bigger problem. R. Kelly is set to go to trial in a little bit under 6 weeks. We cannot meet with him. We cannot see him. We cannot talk to him about his case. We cannot review documents with him. How in this country can someone be expected to go to trial and defend themselves against this kind of an onslaught, and they're kept as if they're in a dungeon in some third world nation?
So From my experience, usually if a defense attorney comes in and says, we're not ready, we have to get through the discovery, we've got to do this, we haven't been able to meet with our client because of these restrictions, most courts will say, okay, we'll see you in a couple months. Do you foresee a problem with getting this case moved a little bit later in light of everything that's happened in the world?
Well, we don't want to get the case moved. We want to prepare and we want to be able to go to trial. They are trying cases. They did 2 cases here in federal court in Illinois this week, and I think they're starting up trials again in New York. We don't want to, the same people that are prosecuting R. Kelly control whether we can see him or not. It's all the Department of Justice. It's all one big umbrella. And it's unfair. So we shouldn't have to go and say, because you're making it impossible for us to meet with our client and prepare for trial, we need a continuance of the trial. Let's have a fair playing field here and let us get going on this thing.
All right. Millions of people have seen Surviving R. Kelly. People understand this was a strange, strange world he was living in. And a lot of people think he's a really bad person, does not treat women well. Can you explain what is your argument going to be? Because you've got accuser after accuser who's going to come into courtrooms in 2 different states, in different jurisdictions. And I mean, are they all lying?
Well, I don't know that they're all lying, because you have to examine what they've said and how that fits into the charges. To the extent people have said that R. Kelly kidnapped women, held them hostage, chained them up in his house, stuff like that. No one says it except for these women who went on the show. Now, you can imagine that R. Kelly, the amount of people that had to be coming in and out on a daily basis. How many people were at the studio? How many people were at these mansions he had? He would have these gigantic parties with hundreds of people at his house. None of those people say that they saw anything that these women say occurred. No one found any hooks in the ground that you would handcuff someone to or in a wall. No one found any spots on the carpets where, if someone was peeing in a bucket, you'd expect to find some overspill or something like that. None of it's confirmed. There's no physical evidence. There's no video evidence. So why these people said what they said, I think that what happened was that it got out of control and it was sort of like a snowball rolling down the hill. There's not going to be the physical evidence to back up 99% of the allegations that are being made.
So what I'm hearing from you is that when you go to trial, these are not cases where, hey, you've got evidence that you need to present. You are just saying they don't have enough evidence to prove this. And I understand that's the burden of proof, but there are trials where the defense comes in and says, no, we've got evidence that you're lying. We've got evidence of this. We've got evidence of that. This is a case where you're just saying they don't have the evidence.
They don't. And let me give you one of the examples. One of the charges in New York is that he went from New York to New Jersey and had sex with someone while he had a sexually transmittable disease. That's one of the RICO acts. Now just imagine if every time someone who had, VD or something like that, or under the New York law, even a yeast infection qualifies. Imagine if they could turn that into a federal case. It's overkill. It's overreach, and it's just an abuse of the system.
Now, do you think R. Kelly, after the documentary and after, he had charges years ago, was found not guilty, I understand, but do you think his reputation has been so tarnished that he doesn't get what most celebrities get inside a courtroom, which is the benefit of the doubt? I've seen it time after time.
Right. I like to call it the super presumption of innocence, and O.J. Simpson is probably the greatest example of that. Unfortunately, I think that he's getting the super presumption of guilt, but that's our job as lawyers, to talk to the jurors in voir dire, to talk to them in opening statement, to hope that we pick jurors who can put that aside and listen to the evidence. I have great faith in our jury system here in this country. I've tried horrific cases with great results over the years and found jurors are willing to listen to the evidence and put aside what they hear, all the noise that's around a case, and I'm confident that'll happen in this case.
All right. Steve Greenberg, the attorney for R. Kelly, joining us tonight on the program. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.